I don't know if this conversation is too early to have. Part of me really thinks it is. Part of me sits here and thinks,
you are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Yankees, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias. And with me, as usual, as you can see, my co-host, Brian McKeon. Brian, happy hump day.
Stacey, happy hump day. Lots of news. Dominating 2 wins. What is it, 24-6 in the last 2 days?
Yeah. 2 12-3 wins. Kind of odd, but cool.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about both of those wins. We'll also talk about some other interesting things. Before we get started, don't forget, subscribe to Locked On Yankees on whichever podcasting platform you prefer. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like our videos, hit the bell so you're notified whenever our videos go live. Our next big number, 8,500 subscribers.
Almost there. I wanted 10,000 by opening day, but 8,500 is still due for me. We're getting 10,000 by the All-Star break, though.
Yes, that'll be our new goal. So yes,
Absolutely.
today's show, we're going to look back at June 2nd, 2005. And there's a reason for that. We'll explain that later. We're also going to dive into the JD Martinez rumors because those are still floating around because everyone's floating around rumors about what the Yankees can do while Giancarlo Stanton's out. But first, yes, let's talk about the two. I just found this so funny because I realized it earlier, like about 10 minutes ago when I was looking at everything. I'm like, wow, they won both games, 12-3. The Yankees beat the Pittsburgh Pirates on Tuesday night, 12-3. This was our first look at Max Fried, correct?
Correct, yeah. Not overly impressive, I think, from their standards. But again, when it comes to veteran pitchers, I don't think any of us are really worried, or nor as a Yankee fan should you be worried about what they do at this time of year.
Yeah, 2 1/3 innings, 2 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 strikeouts. The earned runs happened when he left the game. He had runners on base, and then the guy who came in behind him gave up those runs. And it's too early to panic about the established starters. When you see their numbers, like, Cole did pretty well, but Stroman's been having issues. Rodon has been having issues. Fried didn't really have issues. He's just working through things. You're looking at the guys who are fighting for spots on the team. That's who you have to look at and make sure that they're doing okay because they're playing to be on the team. Where someone like Max Fried, he's getting 213, 16. What's the contract?
18.
18. That's it.
18.
He's making the team.
What I find wild, though, about this season, and not really wild about this season in particular, because Yankee players tend to do this every year, but the guys that are trying to make the roster are making noise. And you're seeing a lot of it so far in spring training. And, a lot of guys that are starting to inch their way into conversation of do they make this roster somehow? Now, I don't know if this conversation is too early to have. Part of me really thinks it is. Part of me sits here and thinks, maybe I don't know. We've seen crazier stuff happen before. And I got to bring this up now. He'll be a topic of conversation on this show and probably for the next month and a half. George Lombard Jr.
Yeah.
Hit another home run in the game 2 nights ago. And it was a moonshot. It was a big league home run. It was a big boy home run. He plays a terrific field. He's got tremendous amount of range. There's an opening at the position that he can play. I know he's young. And I know we're going to highlight later on in the show how young in particular he is.
Yeah.
I also want to highlight he has been coming in replacement of Anthony Volpe this spring, meaning he's facing worse pitchers generally later on in games. He's not facing the top tier guys. But from what he's done so far in the spring, he's been outstanding. He's been one of the most impressive Yankees in camp so far. And I know there's not a lot of guys that are going full speed. Aaron Judge is not going crazy out there. These guys are getting 3 at-bats at the max the normal starters are. So there's a different vibe to it. But I want to ask a question to you because when we go over Tuesday's game, when we go over Wednesday's game, Stacey, am I crazy to think there's a legitimate chance he makes the roster?
Actually, no. After keeping track of his performance during during Tuesday's game, it's Tuesday's game. Today's Wednesday. Mm-hmm.
Wednesday's game.
The day that the show goes up, it's Wednesday. he looked amazing. The Phillies had a lot of trouble getting him out in that game. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like every time I looked, George Lombard Jr. had another hit, and if I saw that he didn't have a hit, I was shocked.
Yeah, and he when he gets hits too, he's squaring up the ball. He's not accidentally getting into base hits. They're not bloop singles. He hits the ball. He hits it with barrel. He hits it with meaning. So I don't know. I do think part of this conversation only exists because the Yankees have an opening at the position that he can play. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Well, one of the
But
positions he can play
yeah,
because he's a
yeah.
shortstop, but he can play third.
But he's not going to be. I mean, if the Yankees have it their way, he's not playing shortstop ever in
No,
his career. If
no.
they have it their way, Anthony Volpe is the shortstop for the next 15 years, and George Lombard Jr. never gets a chance to play shortstop. So he better pick up on third base or second base. Now, I don't know if they have a great taste for moving Jazz over to third, especially with him and Volpe working out together for the last month that they've been at spring training. That coupled with having him train the entire offseason for second base with that idea, I don't think you necessarily want to say to Jazz, even though I don't think Jazz would complain about it, you don't want to say to Jazz, hey, you're going to go back to third base because Lombard Jr. is coming up. However, if Lombard Jr. keeps tearing the cover off the ball like he's been doing, we've seen crazier stuff happen before. We have. Ronald Acuna was up at a really young age. The Mets are going to call Luis Angel Acuna up this year, and he's probably going to have a part to do with that team. He's like 18, 19 years old. We've seen young players get called up this early, and the Yankees aren't afraid to do it either. They called Anthony Volpe up at an alarmingly young age. I don't think a lot of people were expecting him to necessarily get called up that year unless his hitting was ridiculous and his spring. And let's be real, Anthony Volpe's rookie year, he was on the team because his spring was so good. That's why he was on the team. Jason Dominguez is ridiculously young. There's many players. The Yankees have had a tendency to do this over the years. And with an opening, with them not having much of a taste for, Peraza, Cabrera, they won't commit to one of them yet. I'm sorry. I don't think it's that crazy to say that Lombard can make this team. Again, I know he's young. Being born in 2005 is scary even for me to say out loud. But I don't think it's that crazy that he could be on this team. I really don't.
Yeah, the thing is, no matter how good he does, the Yankees have to think about the fact that they have Oswaldo Cabrera. He got a few hits also in Tuesday's game against Philadelphia. They have Oswald Peraza also, who they're looking to possibly put at third. He has no options, so they have to figure out what to do with him if he doesn't make the team. And I think that they would probably, I think they would shy away from bringing Lombard Jr. up too early, but I think they would have it in the back of their minds. Okay, this kid was really good in the spring. We'll keep our eye on him. The highest level he played was high A, and see how he does during the season. And if he hits his way through the system and he gets up to Triple A, then maybe you see him at the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Volpe even appeared in AAA for the most part, right? He was only in AA when they called him up. So
right, I think he was like barely in AAA.
And Jason Dominguez didn't get a lot of AAA time either. So they do have a tendency, they'll skip you over if they need to. I do agree with you. I do think a minor problem here is service time. Because of the fact that Peraza has no options, that's going to be a problem. Because again, if you call him up to the major league roster and you need to send him back down, you can't. He immediately hits waivers, and with how highly touted of a prospect he is, someone is going to claim him. He will not go unclaimed. So if they have to call him up to the major league roster, he is staying on the roster for the rest of the season at this point. If they need to send him down, he will no longer be a Yankee. That's a problem for them. But I do think that's another problem too. With Lombard being as young as he is, let's remember, once you call him up, that clock starts. So he could play the next 7 years in AA. Really doesn't matter. He's still becoming a free agent after those 7 years. So you don't want to really start that clock too early if you don't have to. However, there's also the caveat of they're in win now mode, Stacey. They're in World Series mode. So if he's the best player on the roster, he's got to play. Like there's no, you really can't, you're not in a rebuilding period here where you're trying to see what guys fit in what positions. They're in win now mode. If he's the best player, they're going to have to go with him. I do agree with you. There are some logistical speed bumps in the way right here to get him to be playing full time.
Yeah. Other guys, let's highlight other guys who did some things, especially in Tuesday's game against Philly. They were in Clearwater for it. they exploded against Zach Wheeler. And I know we were talking about Yankee starters, like, don't worry about if they give up too many runs, but I'd be a little worried about Zach Wheeler just because his ERA is like 11 now because of the outing that he had on Tuesday against the Yankees. Will Warren looked good in his outing. He pitched 3 innings, gave up 1 run, struck out 4, and his ERA in spring is 1.13. So that's a guy you need to look at, because that's the guy who's trying to fight for a position on the team. He wants to be the guy that the Yankees say, maybe we won't use Marcus Stroman. Maybe we'll use Will Warren as our 5th starter. So he is fighting for a spot.
It's funny you bring that up, because Marcus Stroman, who, ever so famously or infamously, whichever way you want to put it, at the start of this year did say, I'm a starter. Stacey, give me the argument against Will Warren making the team and Marcus Stroman not making the team over him. Give me the argument right now, because I don't think there's much of one.
There's not much of one. Not right now. Not if you look at the two of them and how they're working and how they're doing. And how they're throwing. I mean, Will Warren looks like a completely different pitcher.
Completely different pitcher. I agree with you. Also from Tim Hill's looked really good out of the bullpen this year so far. Another guy that they're bringing back, obviously. Also, I think a key, and again, these stats aren't too crazy, but Devin Williams, and we know he's great, but if you saw the game on Tuesday against Philly, that ghost 2-seamer that comes back over the plate along with that slider, that I don't know how anyone hits that pitch. I don't. It's nowhere near the strike zone when it finishes in the catcher's mitt. So their pitching so far looks really strong, and that's a positive sign, because we know this Yankee team, while their offense is going to be pretty decent, they're going to go as far as their pitching is going to let them go. They are. Yeah. As good as their starters are and as good as their relievers are, that's how good this team's going to do. So seeing them pitch really well to the start so far is really a key.
Yep. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on our videos, hit the notification so you know when our videos go up. You can also join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. The link is in our description. You get text from us. You can text us questions, comments, reactions to trades and signings. We send out lineups during the season, roster moves, and any breaking news, so you don't have to check social media. There's a 14-day free trial. Coming up next, how much traction is there with the JD Martinez rumors? We'll discuss that next.
Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and a better-for-you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. Now, personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk on a road trip or I just need a quick protein boost, they are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite as well. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. And thanks again for making Locked On Yankees your first listen. Remember that every Friday is Fan Mail Friday. You can leave questions underneath the pinned comment on our videos Monday through Thursday, or you can join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. Those fans get top priority during Fan Mail Friday. The link is in our description. So, Stacey, you keep seeing this going around in the news lately, and this player gets mentioned. It feels like he's a topic of conversation every single offseason. Someone's bringing up JD Martinez. Someone's interested. Someone wants his services. Now, let's preface it with this. Came off the season with the Mets last year. Still finished with 16 homers and 24 doubles. Now, was he the superstar that he was in Boston? Absolutely not. But still a pretty productive year for a guy that started off on the IL, missed the first 2 months, came back, really wasn't in an offensive loaded team, and still did some decent stuff out there. Now, the Yankees' fear of acquiring him is if he starts off the 2 months slow like he did last year with the Mets and missing spring training, which he'd be doing now. That was the cause of him being awful for the first 2 months of the Mets last year. That could be a problem. Still had a decent year for them. It was the first year in a while that he missed the All-Star team. He's made the All-Star team 5 out of the last 6 years. He's dipped in production for sure. He's not the same player. I've done some due diligence. I've asked around. I've texted people that I know within the baseball landscape of if there's a lot of interest out there in him. From what I've heard personally, it's a lot of chatter from media members that are putting it out there of if he's an option. It's not something the Yankees have necessarily dug their teeth into. Now, I don't think JD Martinez would be a difficult signing at this point in time. I don't know if he signs for much more than the league minimum, to be quite honest with you. I'm not hearing that there's a lot of teams that are very interested in him particularly. So I think anyone who really calls and asks for his services at this point, they're going to get a quick answer back from him. I just don't know if this is the right way to go. You didn't know Stanton was going to be hurt. I don't think there's anything what do you do with JD Martinez when Stanton's ready to come back?
Right.
I just don't know if this is a move that really fits them for what they need. You're probably better off going forward with trying to piece together the DH position with some scotch tape before bringing in JD Martinez.
Yeah, I think, we keep saying that the DH is just going to be like a round robin of guys who need rest or guys who maybe have good numbers against a certain pitcher and you want to bring him in, but you're already set in the outfield. Like if you want Trent Grisham to face someone because he's hit like 3 home runs off a dude and you're like, oh, let's put Trent Grisham in, but you don't want to move Bellinger, then maybe you do that. Aaron Judge takes a break in from right field and DHs. Like, I think that would be the better solution for now because they have enough. I feel like they have enough guys on the team to hit the ball. You could put Ben Rice at DH when he's not catching and you have him and Austin Wells.
Which that's a legitimate possibility, by the way.
Yeah.
I do think another option too, and again, don't want to dive too deep into spring numbers, but it does have to start getting talked about. Dom Smith. And I know he's a veteran player, and I know his career has not been as prolific as JD Martinez. Certainly hasn't had the numbers that Martinez has put up. But Stacey, we can't ignore how well he's hit so far. He's getting starting reps with the Yankees too. They're starting him in the lineup. He's hitting off the top pitchers, and he's been good. I mean, he hasn't been great. He's not an unbelievable player, but if you're asking him to come in and really fill time in April, May, possibly through mid-June, but definitely not into the summer, I don't think that's asking too much out of Dom Smith, who at worst case, Stacey, if he has a really good first half, the Yankees can trade him and get value for him. So there's motivation for the Yankees to have him play well, but also for him to play well to extend his career. So I don't think it's a crazy thing that Dom Smith could be the answer for DH, not full time, but a guy who fills in, rotates with Ben Rice, gets other guys rest. I don't think that's crazy. And again, how much more productive is JD Martinez going to be than whoever they fill in?
Right.
I don't know. And if you're talking about Stanton gets hurt at the new year and you bring JD into camp and you sign him in January and you bring him into camp and he gets a full regimen of camp, that I understand a little more at this point.
Yeah.
But right now, again, you saw the direct effects. He signed with the Mets midway through spring training last year, and he really didn't get it going until June. Now Yankees are going to be doing the exact same thing. And then what? Maybe he gets it going as soon as Stanton comes back. Right. It doesn't fit at this point. So, and again, from everything I've heard within, organizations and stuff, it does just seem like it's been a media kind of like thrown out narrative that JD Martinez is available. What about him? He's not the same JD Martinez he was 24 months ago.
Yeah. And Dom Smith's another one of those guys. He's playing for a spot.
Yeah. And not even that, Stacey. He's playing for a spot right now in camp, but he's playing for his career once he makes the major league roster. He wants to get a 2-3 year deal after this year and extend his career a little bit. There's something to that. Guys with a chip on their shoulder. We've seen it all the time throughout, any sport you watch. That's one of the things I was complaining about yesterday with Marcus Stroman is you're not seeing that out of Marcus Stroman, and you're seeing that out of Dom Smith, and you see the level of production and dedication that comes with that. There's nothing scarier than a motivated athlete, especially to keep his career intact, and Dom Smith's fighting for that. I don't think it's a crazy thing. I think if the season starts right now, Dom Smith is on the team. Honestly.
Yeah. And I think he would be a good option. Again, I like the round robin idea, just like putting different guys at DH. I know it's not ideal to have someone different in the lineup every single day, and I don't think it would be every single day, but I like the idea of having the DH spot be a place where you want Judge in the lineup, but maybe you don't want him in right. You want to give him some rest. So you put him in the DH spot. You could do the same thing for Bellinger. You could do the same thing for Goldschmidt too. Like maybe you don't want him at first, because he's getting up there in age as well, and maybe give him a spell, but you want him in the lineup because maybe he has numbers against a pitcher and you just put him into that position.
And this might be more of a low-key point to it, but I just thought of this right now, actually. This gives them an opportunity to move guys around a little bit and find out where they're comfortable. You do have they don't want to admit it, but you do sort of have a hole at left field. You don't know if Jason Dominguez, with his struggles so far, is your definitive. They're going to give him every opportunity at left field, but what if he doesn't work out there, right? Third base doesn't have an answer yet. This might give them an opportunity to still give guys play time, but also try them in positions they're not familiar with. So you could be getting that going a little bit too. Heck, maybe you throw Jason Dominguez back in center field and let him play his natural position and try out Bellinger in left. Now, he's never played left before, but why not? You have that open position now and you have that open ability. The open roster spot could help out a little bit.
I mean, Bellinger said he'd play anywhere. He'd play center, he'd play first, he'd play left if they need it. So,
yeah.
I mean, he said all the right things, but I think he legit would do it if you needed him to do it.
Most likely. I don't think you want to move him out of his Gold Glove position, but I get your point. I don't think asking him would be a crazy thing.
Right. All right. Well, we were talking about George Lombard Jr. So coming up next, we're going to discuss June 2nd, 2005, which was the day George Lombard Jr. was born. And we're going to tell you how the Yankees did that day and who was playing for them. Now, I love stuff like this, obviously, because, I mean, I watched this game live when it happened. And did I know a future Yankee was born?
Yeah, I might have too. I was about a month away from turning 8 years old.
At the time, you're not thinking to yourself like, oh, a future Yankee could be born right now. Like, you're not thinking that when you're watching a Yankee game at all. So June 2nd, 2005, the Yankees took on the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City. So Brian Hoke had posted this because he said, this is the lineup the day that George Lombard Jr. was born. And I love doing stuff like this. I used to write stuff like this when I was a baseball writer. Like, I went back in time, I did a random box score series where I'd go back. I went to the 70s, I went to the 80s, and I wrote about who was in the box score and what happened during the game. And it was so much fun to do that. It was like 3,000 to 3,500 words every story. And you just learned a lot about what happened on those particular days. One article I wrote was because after my father passed away, I was going through his old books and I found a ticket stub from a Met game in the 70s. And I looked it up and I saw what happened and I wrote about it.
That's pretty cool. That's a really cool memory, actually. No, and this lineup is, if you're a mid 2000s Yankee fan and you grew up through that era, kind of like legitimately I did. This is peak me getting into baseball time at that age. So I might have missed this game because I had a T-ball game to attend that I was playing in. I was probably starting at first base that day, but this lineup is fantastic to read through.
So here it goes. Leading off, Derek Jeter at shortstop, Tony Womack in left field, Gary Sheffield in right field, Hideki Matsui DHing, A-Rod at third, Tino Martinez playing first base because he went on a heater that month and basically replaced Jason Giambi for a while, Jorge Posada catching, Bernie Williams center field, and rookie Robinson Cano playing second base. And he was just under a month in the majors. He made his debut May 3rd, 2005. This was June 2nd, 2005. So he had only really been in the majors for a month at that point, which is crazy to think about because he just turned 42.
Which is nuts. Former Staten Island Yankee great, by the way, Robinson Cano. So he was a few years prior playing in my hometown, which is wild to think about. This lineup is, you know what made me think about this lineup? 2005 is the year that in local New York delis, they sold those little baseball punch magnets that you would get like a cardboard piece of the Yankee roster. And if you went to the deli and bought something, they would give you one of these punch magnets that basically you stuck into a box. My mom went every single day and bought like a lottery ticket and got the punch thing with it and gave it to me. And I collected all these. And this is the team that I was collecting. So yeah, I had my Tony Womack punch thing and my Derek Jeter and my Bernie Williams and Robbie Cano one. So this Cheng Ming Wong was on this team, right? For sure. This was an interesting roster for sure. And the starter that day, read the line off, please.
Yes. So Carl Pavano started that night. He gave up 5 runs on 9 hits in 5 1/3 innings. So
not what they signed him for.
No, he was a mess. He was a mess. And I saw him pitch a lot, which was really funny. For some reason, once Andy Pettitte left, I unfortunately got stuck seeing Carl Pavano too much, and he didn't even pitch that much, but he just happened to always start on Sundays. And I'm pretty sure was I at the game where he got hit in the rear end and then he was out for like 3 months or something crazy like that? I know I was at a game where he got taken out in 05.
I'm always hoping. I have that same problem. Well, I had that same problem with CC. I have the Friday night plan, and every Friday night he would pitch like every Friday night home game. I'm hoping that it becomes like Garrett Cole one of these years. I'll take a Max Fried year. I really want to have a year where I get consistent greatness. And it was for like 3 years in a row that CC pitched like every Friday night home game for whatever reason. So I got a lot of CC Sabathia starts, but later on in his career, CC Sabathia.
Yeah. As I always say, Andy Pettit's the guy I saw the most regular season, postseason. That was my dude. So he was always. It was like, once when he left for Houston, it was like jarring because I thought, oh God, who am I going to see? Who am I going to see starting in a game? I don't like this at all. This is bad. But yeah, it's funny to look back at that team because when you look at the total box score and you see like the guys who were subbed in, like, Tanyan Sturtz came in after Pavano was taken out. And like, you think of those guys and you're just like, wow. Yeah. Cause 2005, I actually went to a few good games in 2005. July of 2005 was when Giambi went off and he hit like 12 home runs, 13 home, something crazy like that. And we saw a game against the Royals. Young Zach Greinke pitched, and Giambi had 7 RBIs, 2 home runs, an RBI single. And it was funny too, because my friend, when we were going up the escalator to get to the seats in the upper deck, she said, I'll never forget this. We were on the escalator, the one closest to the subway in right field, because we'd go there and then walk around to my seats, because my seats were between first base and home plate in the upper deck, 5th row, the upper deck. She's like, I'm feeling Giambi mojo today. Like, I feel like he's going to have a really good game today. And after his first home run, I was like, okay. And then after his second home run, I was like, dude. And then after the RBI single, I was like, what is happening right now? Because the Yankees won that game 10-3, but Giambi basically beat them 7-3.
I think this team lost in the DS, right? To the Angels.
That was the year that Bubba Crosby and was it Gary Sheffield collided in the outfield against the wall in Anaheim.
Okay. And they won a boatload of games this year too, right? Just an underperforming team in the postseason. Did this team win like 90, 94 games or something? This team won a lot of games. Yeah,
I'm trying to think what their record was.
But no one thinks of the 2005 Yankees as this barn burner of a team, but I can search it because they did win a lot of games, I think. But
the pitching was questionable because you had Pavano, you had Jarrett Wright, Randy Johnson, old Randy Johnson.
Yeah, wow, Randy Johnson. This was his last year with the Yankees, I believe. He didn't go into 06 with them.
No, I think Johnson was there 05 and 06.
Okay, so this was the first year. This is when they paid him a boatload of money especially for back then to pitch with them.
Yeah. You had Wong, you had Moose.
Weird team.
It was a weird team. And they brought in Tino. Giambi wasn't doing that great. It was after the whole Balco thing, and people were like, oh, he's done because he's not taking steroids, and then he was fine. After like
95 and 67, they won the AL East.
Yeah.
What a weird year for them, though. I mean, really, it's a weird season where they don't really. They win a ton of games, but it's because it's the Yankees, it just goes away. Any other team has a 95 win season and loses in the ALDS, and people talk about it for the next decade. The Yankees one, and seems to the season just goes, and it's coming off of 04 also, which is a little bit of a sore point too. But what a weird year.
Yeah, because 01 they make the World Series, they lose it. 02 they lose in the DS, and 02 they won like over 100 games if I'm not mistaken. 03 obviously they lose in the World Series. 04 we know what happened, and then 05 and then 06 07 same thing, win a bunch of games but lose in the division series.
That's kind of like what, and it's crazy that they consider that the downturn, right? Like that's when the downturn comes, and then at the end of 08
other teams would have killed for those years.
For that stretch. Just the 2005 to 2008 stretch they would kill for.
Yeah.
And which is basically what the Cleveland Guardians are doing right now. That's exactly what what these teams would kill for. And yet the Yankees, as soon as 08 was over, they were like, all right, screw this. We gotta spend a boatload of money and get back in. And that's what they did in 09. That's obviously we know what happens, but it is wild to think about the Yankees dead period of the late 2000s winds up being what other teams would kill for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you think about 95, just 95 to 2007, because 08, they don't make the playoffs. So from 95 to 07, any other franchise would kill for what the Yankees did in those years. Like, oh, they made how many World Series? Like, yeah, they lost 2 of them, but they also won 4 of them. Like, or, it's like,
I mean, that's a franchise's history.
Some
for a lot of franchises, literally.
And then other franchises have never even made the World Series, and they've been around for nearly 50 years.
It's weird.
I'm looking at you, Seattle.
Yeah, we are spoiled. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, that's the lineup from June 2nd, 2005, the day George Lombard Jr. was born. So, he's turning 20 in a couple of months, which is, I turned 20 in August of 1994, after the strike. Strike started.
He might not make he might make the Yankee roster, but he cannot buy a beer in New York City.
Right.
Crazy to think about.
Right. He can drink in Canada, but he can't drink in the United States. So that's a bummer for him. Yeah. So the Yankees look good in spring training. The kids really look good. I like that the kids were they were like relentless against the Phillies. I know it's only spring training, but I like that they're basically showing up and showing out for everyone, being like, look, this is what the future might be. Like, this is what you might be able to see if they don't trade us.
Making decisions hard for upper management. I think that's a key point too. The harder they make these decisions for upper management is a good sign for the Yankees minor league system, but also a good sign of what could potentially be to come.
Right. So thank you for making Locked On Yankees your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast with hosts Dominic Martino and Matthew Ane. MLB fantasy draft season is here. Be the most informed fan and set yourself up for a league win. You can find Locked On Fantasy Baseball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Yankees. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias.
And I'm Brian McCann. We'll catch you guys tomorrow.
Well, you will. I won't.
Yeah.